Hello my friends, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about couples therapy, and it's a subject that's very important to me. You see, when I first started practicing therapy, I didn't really expect to do much couples counseling or couples therapy because I didn't really specialize in that. My main focus was and still is actually individual therapy. However, as time passed, I started to get more and more requests for doing couples therapy, and eventually it got to a point where I do a lot of these sessions every week, and I just wanted to make this video to present to you some of the reasons why couples therapy is necessary, and give you some ideas to think about and to ponder, and see if it's a good fit for you. Depending on the country in which you are right now, the attitude regarding marriage and relationships might differ. Like, for instance, right now I'm in Eastern Europe, which is a place where you sort of get half of the traditional approach that comes from having a very long tradition. Here we are Orthodox Christians, so very strong values based on religion and so on. And but we also get the sort of the less strict, more relaxed approach from Western Europe, because Eastern Europe is heavily influenced by Western Europe, and of course to some degree by the ideas coming from the United States. We're not very traditional. We used to be. We are becoming more and more relaxed as time goes by. However, some ideas still remain strong here, like strong family values. Divorce is not so much frowned upon as it was 30, 40 years ago, but yet it's still not as normal as it is in Western Europe. So I may or may not be influenced by the country I live in. I'll let you decide on that. But I just wanted to put it into context for you, so that you see where I'm coming from, and you can judge my ideas more appropriately and see if they make sense to you. To start off, I want to say that it's becoming more and more easy to get out of a relationship and to get out of a marriage. At least in the last 10, maybe 20 years, in my country as well, divorce has been very streamlined, and it's becoming a more and more efficient process. So it's quite easier to get divorced right now. However, this might also cause a problem, because when you can get out of something quite easily, you might not think through very carefully before going into that something, just because there's a low risk involved for you. When people get to a crisis in their relationship, in their marriage, and so on, it's much easier actually to get out of the relationship and get divorced if necessary than try to fix things. And many people get out of the relationship, and they try to convince themselves that they learned their lesson, that they won't do the same mistakes again, and so on. However, a few years down the line, they end up in a different relationship, they get married again, and they find themselves in pretty much the same situation as before. And why does that happen? And it all comes down to the fact that in every relationship we enter, we are responsible for half of the relationship. There is no situation, and I've never encountered any situation where one partner is responsible for 90% and the other is responsible for just 10%. Both are equally responsible for what happens in the relationship, even if it doesn't seem like that when you first look at the facts. So because of that, even if you end your current relationship, if you don't fix what went wrong inside that relationship, because you are a big part of it, you might in the future end up in the same place. There are all these things that we carry with us that we bring into the relationship. There are thought patterns, ideas about how men are, how women are, so on. Childhood traumas, there are expectations. All of these things we bring to the relationship, and sometimes they conflict with those same types of things that the partner brings into the relationship, that our partner brings to the relationship. When that happens, what do? Do you try to make him, do you try to convince the other person that you are right and they need to agree with you? Or do you try to work together to make the relationship go on? When people come into couples therapy, a lot of the times they try to persuade the therapist to side with them. Either they both do it, more or less obvious, or just one of them, but it's usually both. It's just that they use different tactics. In couples therapy, there's never the issue of who is right in the room, because everybody's right and everybody's wrong at the same time. Each person has their own reality, and according to that reality and according to those beliefs and those experiences that the person has, they are right. However, the other person has different ideas, different opinions, different experiences, so they are right also, just in a different way. And there's a story actually that I like to tell in the sessions regarding this subject, and it's about a Jewish rabbi, which is, if in case you don't know, the rabbi is sort of like a priest in the Jewish community. So there's this rabbi that one day has some people over, and they're a couple, a husband and a wife, and they come to the rabbi to seek counseling because they're having arguments regarding something, doesn't matter what. So the rabbi tries to listen to their story. He first hears the wife out. She tells him what's bothering her. He listens very carefully, and when she finishes, he says, "Yes, you are right." Then the husband takes a turn, and he starts to tell the rabbi everything that upsets him, and he goes on for a while, and when he's done, the rabbi looks at him and says, "Yes, you are right." Then the couple leaves, and the wife of the rabbi who overheard the conversation, steps into the room and asks him, "Rabbi, what did you do? You heard the wife out and you told her that she was right. You then heard the husband out and you told him that he was right. But they can't be both right at the same time." And the rabbi looks at her and says, "Yes, you are also right." So the moral of the story is that every person is right in their own way, according to their own ideas, their own subjective reality. Reality is subjective. It's not entirely objective. We filter reality through our senses, but also through our ideas, through our misconceptions even. We sort of apply our own twist on reality, and that twist actually changes reality, and it becomes subjective reality. It becomes our own reality, which is different from the reality of other people. So when you come into a therapy office expecting for the therapist to side with you and tell you that you are right, he will tell you that you are right, but you are not the only person that is right in that room. There's also there's your reality, there's the reality of your partner or your husband or your wife, and there's also the reality of the therapist. So every person involved is subjective. It's not like the therapist is the holder of some supreme truth. If he were, he might eventually be able to decide on whether one of you is right. But as the situation stands, he's also subjective. So he's not. So he can't do that, even if maybe he wanted to at some point. Don't expect to be right. Expect the relationship to be set right and to continue to move on and develop and so on. So this actually leads us to another point, and that is the fact that very few people actually know themselves well enough to be able to say what they want and figure out what they want and who they want. Answering the question about what do you want is actually a pretty tough task. It takes a great deal of self-awareness to be able to honestly and directly answer a question like that. The fact that people can't really answer that question might be the reason why they don't really take the time to consider the decision of getting married and having children. And that's a pretty big issue, because entering a marriage in which you're not entirely sure how it will play out, deciding to have children and sort of winging it, and if it doesn't work out, just get a divorce, actually has a lot of implications, and it can cause a great deal of suffering for you, for your partner, for your children, and so on. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't get out of a marriage if it's really bad for you. If, for example, your husband abuses you or beats you, or if he's abusive to children, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't get out of a marriage if you're a guy and your wife cheats on you constantly, or diminishes you, or makes you makes you feel bad about yourself, which is in fact called psychological abuse. I'm not saying that. Get out of a marriage if it's wrong, uh, if it's doing you harm, or if your partner causes harm to other people. I'm just saying that maybe people would be better served, and they would avoid a great deal of suffering if they would think about these things before they decide to get married and have children. Therapy, couples therapy, actually can be done at the end of the relationship. I mean, there are a lot of people doing that actually. The majority of them come into the office right before they get a divorce and expect the therapist to perform some sort of miracle and avoid the separation. But therapy could also be done before the marriage. It's called premarital counseling. And it's something like a personal discovery journey that the two people involved in a relationship can embark on together and see where it takes them, and see if 10, 20, 30 years from now they might still be compatible with each other. That doesn't mean that you look into a crystal ball and predict the future, because no one can do that. The therapist is not a wizard that can foresee the future. But the therapist might point out some things that could be a problem later down the line. Things that you don't think about right now because you're thinking that everything will work out, we'll find a solution as long as we love each other, which are in fact ideas that don't really work out that way. That in the long run, things don't generally tend to work themselves out. In the long run, things generally tend to fall apart. So if you're betting your whole future on the idea that things will work out, it's not a really sound strategy to apply. And one last point that I want to make is that couples therapy is important because your partner, your husband or your wife, is an extremely important factor in determining your life satisfaction. And not only that, but it's probably the safest predictor of success that there is. So there are some studies that have been done that show that having the right partner actually predicts your eventual success in life in general. And if you think about it, it's actually common sense, because being in a relationship with the right person, the right person not meaning your soulmate, meaning a person that's aligned with your values, that wants the same things, that has some sort of qualities that allow for the relationship to develop and to grow. When you're in a relationship with a person like that, you feel motivated, and you feel like you can bring your best self to the table and to life in general. On the other hand, when you're in a relationship that's abusive or toxic, or you're not a good fit with your partner, that relationship actually drains you of energy, of willpower, of joy. It actually prevents you from enjoying your life, and it stands to reason that when you are in a bad relationship, you won't bring your best self to face life's challenges. So having the right partner and having the right relationship is actually a very, very important thing, because it can affect, and it actually does affect, everything else in your life. So these are my thoughts on the subject. If you think that couples therapy is something that would benefit you, you can make an appointment with me or look up someone else and make the appointment. Just don't postpone it unnecessarily, because in my experience, once you feel that there's a need to involve some sort of professional help in dealing with the issues of the relationship, the relationship is actually past the point where things can work themselves out by themselves. So it's past the point where you can just wing it and see what happens in the future. Usually, when you've reached that point, things just get worse as more time passes on. So don't postpone it, because we are talking about your future, basically. The future of the relationship, of course, but your future also. So go ahead and ask for help if you feel that you can benefit from it. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you've liked the video, don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.